Welcome to The Hindu Editorial. My name is Ryan Pinto, and today I'm going to discuss The Hindu Editorial on November 17th. So, first, what are we going to discuss? Today, in the discussion, a very important topic is on RCEP, that is, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Now, RCEP, what is the context? Why are we discussing this today? RCEP in in November 2019, India came out of RCEP, and recently, that is on 16th and 17th of November, 2020, RCEP has come up with a final go and a final document which they have signed. Where is this important? RCEP? RCEP is going to be important for your international relations, international organization. A lot of questions coming in your GS paper 2, that is mains, international organization, and many questions also coming in your prelims. So, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, as you can see in front of you, is a trade, or you can say it's a trade pact or trade union between 15 countries. India came out of this RCEP. You can see the major countries are, first, it is the ASEAN countries, the 10 ASEAN countries which are important. It includes Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Indonesia, etc. 10 important countries from ASEAN plus 6. Now, India has not signed the RCEP. Last year, it came out of the RCEP. And RCEP will help to improve the trade of the countries which are the signatories. So, in this, we are going to discuss what are the positive points and negative points. Should India be reconsidering its decision? Now, let's go ahead. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. It's a mega regional economic agreement being negotiated since 2012 between ASEAN and the FTA member partners. So remember, it's a mega regional economic partnership. When we talk about RCEP, what you have to remember is it is between ASEAN and the FTA partners. Now, ASEAN had made FTAs with various countries. ASEAN had made FTAs with various countries. So it's an economic partnership with those countries. What is the goal? That is to boost economic growth and equitable economic development, advance economic cooperation, and broaden economic integration in the region through RCEP. So first of all, it's an economic agreement. It is for boosting economic growth. Remember the goals and the aims. Aims to cover trade in goods and services, investment, economic and technical cooperation, intellectual property, and dispute resolution. So, remember the goals and the aims. It started discussion in 2012. In 2020, it signed the RCEP agreement. Let's see the history. Countries in East Asian region have thriving trade and economic relation with each other through free trade agreements. So, in East Asia, there are many countries all coming together with each other with the free trade agreements. The ASEAN, that is Association of Southeast Asian Nations, plus one FTAs, has free trade agreements with 6 partners. So the ASEAN has 6 partners. And they have FTAs, that free trade agreement with 6 partners. That is the Republic of China, ACFTA, Republic of Korea, AKFTA, Japan, AGACEP, India, AIFTA, and Australia and New Zealand. So ASEAN China FTA, ASEAN Korea FTA, ASEAN Japan FTA, India and Australia and New Zealand. So the whole point was to come together. Instead of having bilateral one-on-one FTAs, all of them can come together and boost trade. to, to broaden and deepen engagement among parties and enhance parties' participation in the economic development of the region. So, it will also help in the economic development of the region. Of the 16 participating members established the RCP. So, these 16 members established the RCP. RCEP was built upon existing ASEAN plus 1 FTAs with the spirit to strengthen economic linkage, enhance trade and investment related activities, as well as contribute to minimizing development gap among the parties. So, many questions coming up from here. So, what is it? It's a mega regional economic arrangement, has 16 members. Now, India is not the member, so 15. Started discussion in 2012, completed in 2020. It is concept of ASEAN plus 6, that is ASEAN plus 1 FTA. So, remember these important points. The RCEP negotiations were launched with between 10 ASEAN members and 6 ASEAN FTA members during 21st ASEAN Summit and related summits in Phnom Penh, Cambodia in 2012. So, the discussion started in 2012, Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Major FTAs India signed. What are the FTAs which are signed by India with these ASEAN members? So, it has South Asia Free Trade Agreement, India ASEAN Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, India Korea Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, India Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So, with these RCP members, India has FTAs with as SAFTA, SECA, SEPA, with that is India ASEAN, India Korea, India Japan. Why India backed out from the RCP? As I told you, India is not a member of the RCP, it backed out. India and RCP. So, let's see what was the reason India backed out. India has dropped out of the RCP in November 2019 in ASEAN plus 3 summit because of the following reasons. First, there is a widening trade deficit. India's trade deficit with ASEAN, Korea and Japan has widened post the FTAs. After having the free trade agreements, the deficit has widened. We are importing more than exporting. So, our current account deficit has increased. Our internal markets will be affected if the goods are flowing from outside only. Tariff elimination duty RCEP could worsen the trade deficit at $105.2 billion in 2018-19. We have a trade deficit of $105.2 billion. Remember this number. It will get worse. The RCEP proposes that 92% of the India's goods would be tariff-free over 15 years. India have to slash existing of tariffs on up to 90% of all goods. So, India has to remove the tariffs up to 90% and 92% will be tariff-free, which will be dangerous. So, goods only will flow from outside. What about our internal manufacturers? India's trade deficit with China is $53 billion. Total is 105, with China itself is $53 billion. Further reduction will lead to influx of cheaper Chinese goods. Sensitive list. Most of the RCP countries have very high tariffs on certain products sensitive to them, such as rice, footwear, dairy products and honey, which they can continue to shield through sensitive list. So, they have brought a concept of sensitive list. They can shield their products and we cannot. That is what is the problematic situation in the RCEP. And recently you must have heard even our External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar criticized the RCP. The objections raised by India. So these are the issues. Now what are the objections which were raised by India? Base year for tariffs. The RCEP will result in reduction of the tariffs in all member countries. As we have seen, India will also be reducing tariffs. 92% will be tariff free. India has to reduce by 90%. Since negotiations began in 2013, the pact has proposed the base year to be 2013. However, India wanted to change the base year to 2019 because India till 2014 has slashed many of the tariffs, or you can say they have reduced many tariffs. 2013, India wants it 2019, whereas RCP is saying 2013. India has raised custom duties on many products since 2014. India has increased tariffs on sectors such as textiles, auto components, electronic components on an average from 13 to 17%. And that is why India wants it since 2019, because they have raised the tariffs, they'll have to then reduce it. Auto trigger mechanism. The auto trigger mechanism is used when there is sudden surge in imports. It will allow to decide which products it does not want to offer the same concessions to. So first is the base year. India wants it 2019, since India has increased the customs from 2014. Auto trigger mechanism. It is a mechanism where the countries can decide on products which should not be given the concession. Ratchet obligation. What do you mean by ratchet obligation? India wants exemption on ratchet obligations. A ratchet mechanism means that if a country signs a trade agreement with another country and removes or reduces tariffs and quotas, it cannot go back on them and bring in more restrictive measures. So you can't come back. So first is, remember, base year, second is auto trigger mechanism, third is ratchet obligations. Data localization. As part of RCP, India wants all countries to have rights to protect data. The countries may prevent the transfer of information across borders. To save the data is very important. Data is currency. We are going to see data is currency nowadays. Services sector. India has demanded that ASEAN countries should open up their services sector to the Indian professionals and workers, so that Indian professional and workers can have easier entry into their market. However, ASEAN countries are sensitive about protecting this sector and have not offered much liberalization even within the bloc. Rules of origin. India wants strict rules of origin to prevent Chinese goods from flooding the country through member countries that may have lower or no duty levels. Chinese garments are making their roadway to India through duty-free route under SAFTA and duty-free, quota-free window from Bangladesh. So the issues with India are: number one, base year; second is auto trigger mechanism; ratchet obligations. That ratchet means you can't go back on the once the agreement is made and you reduce the tariff, you can't increase it again. Data localization. Services sector. India is more keen in the services sector, professionals from India to go into their market. And rules of origin. It should have strong, strict rules of origin, because what happens is once the FTA is signed, say for example, we have signed the FTA and Philippines is one of the member. If Philippines buys it from others and sells it to us, it will be a breach of trust. The sectors that have shown resistance to the agreement. Now we have seen what is the issue with India. Let's see which are the sectors which is having issues. Dairy is vital to India, given the place milk and other derivatives hold in Indian household. New Zealand is exporter of dairy and will be eyeing India primarily to sell milk powder and fat products. India, one of the largest consumers of milk and milk products, has so far been self-sustainable and has sometimes produced a surplus. The entry of New Zealand could change the scenario. So in dairy, there is a danger that New Zealand will be able to get inside the market and our farmers will suffer. 93.4% of New Zealand's milk powder, 94.5% of its butter, and 83.6% of its cheese production got exported in 2018. India's export of milk products does not match up. It could lead 50 million rural people losing their jobs, which will push the need for importing. Second is automobile. RCEP could allow a backdoor entry route for automobile parts from China. Textile. The free import of polyester fabrics from China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and other countries could lead to cheaper textiles affecting in already hit sector. India's trade deficit with China in the textiles and clothing sector is likely to widen, could be detrimental for its domestic textile manufacturers. Steel industry also has concerns regarding China that excessive imports could harm the domestic market. So remember, the dairy industry, automobile, textile, steel, and finally the most important, agriculture. An apex body of planters of tea, coffee, rubber, cardamom, and pepper said that RCP would make things worse for the sector, which is already experiencing a downturn. So the areas are dairy, automobile, textile, steel, agriculture. So just remember, if the question is asked which are the areas affected, you should be able to answer. So we saw what are the problems, we saw what are the areas which are affected. Next, what is the way forward? What should India do if not joining RCP? Is there any other alternative? Strengthen existing agreements. The trade and investment agreements with ASEAN, Japan, Korea, as well as the bilateral agreements with Singapore and Malaysia must be strengthened. Marketing products. The marketing of Indian products to existing favorable markets where India has a low export presence, marketing of products is needed. The Indian industry, which has a business in these markets, can benefit from targeted promotional strategies, given that Indian products are competitive and favored here. So first is strengthen the agreements, second is marketing of products, third is export diversification, increasing the exports in Africa, a rapidly growing continent which enjoys 9% of export share, as well as Latin America. West Asia has also been an expanding market. The export strategy for India requires a two-pronged approach: enhance domestic competitiveness and undertaking targeted promotional activities. So remember, first strengthen the agreements, market products, export diversification. Deeper economic reforms must be initiated, particularly in factor markets of land, labor, and capital. Economic reforms in our country, it will provide much needed impetus to overall manufacturing investments for domestic manufacturing, lowering cost of doing business, building right infrastructure, ensuring faster and more efficient trade facilitation at the borders. So remember, first we saw what are the problems, then which areas are facing the problems, way forward, that is strengthen the market, strengthen the agreements, export diversification, that is go to Africa, Latin America, West Asia, and deeper economic reforms within the country. Targeted export promotion, provide information on markets to their manufacturers and exporters, especially small enterprises. We had seen 99% of around 90% are in India are micro enterprises. Create dedicated agencies and establish offices overseas so that India is well equipped, the exporters are well equipped, and informed professional marketing expertise are got by India. External integration strategy, the country needs to keep its interest on the table. The road to further expansion to its export to RCP member nations is very much still open, given that India already has trade and investment agreements with 12 of them. So though India has not signed, but they are still open for relations. The RCP still wants India because India is 1.3 billion people, a huge market, huge resources, and the RCP would also want India to come aboard. Threat or treat. So we saw the introduction of the RCP. What are the problems with the RCP? what is the way forward? So, is it a threat or treat of India not joining the RCP? The final agreement of RCP covers various issues that India has flagged. RCP was signed into existence on 15th of November 2020 by 15 countries. As I told you, India backed out. 15 countries have signed the RCP, led by Japan, China, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and 10 ASEAN group members, creating one of the largest trading blocs. Noticeable by absence was India. So what was the problem? Burgeoning trade deficits, with majority of 15 RCP members had cited the grouping's refusal to exceed request on safeguards as a deal breaker. So two problems India had. First is the trade deficits, as I discussed. Second is India's concerns were not taken into consideration. The preeminence of the the preeminence of the East Asian and Pacific countries, including China, South Korea, Vietnam, Australia, New Zealand, served as a bulwark in containing the pandemic and re-energizing economic activities, can be hardly understated. So, have we made a mistake of not joining? What are the positive points? It includes big countries like China, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, which played a major role in during the pandemic, and which will help us in re-energize economic activity. So we should be joining because we need to re-energize our activity. But we know what are the problems. So what are the benefits? First is to re-energize the economic activity. Second is it is 30% of the global GDP and has a one third of the world's population. Signatory states were emphatic that the timing of the accord presents a unique opportunity to support their economic recovery. In RCP, smaller countries including Vietnam and Philippines, which not only continue to have their share of disputes with Beijing but also suffer significant trade imbalances with Asia's largest economy. So remember, 30% of GDP, one third of the population, there is an opportunity to support economic recovery. Plus, you might say we have issues with China, Japan, etc. Not Japan, China, and some other countries. The same issues were there with Vietnam and Philippines. Even they overcame their disputes and now trading with the various countries, including China. So the economics is more important rather than geopolitic fights. That these and other large nations in the grouping have chosen to bury their geopolitical differences with China in order to prioritize what they collectively see as a mutually beneficial trading compact. Remember this. Would benefit their economies over the longer term is the clearest testament to economic realism trumping nationalist politics. So remember, these were the benefits of the RCP. Should India reconsider its decision? Also, the summary of the final agreement shows that the pact does cover an attempt to address issues that India had flagged during, including the rules of origin, as I have told you, trade in services, movement of persons, and crucially, remedies and safeguards. Acknowledging India's economic heft and value as a market, the RCP members have only left the door open should New Delhi reconsider its stance, but have also waived a 18-month cooling period for interested applicants. It would be in India's interest to dispassionately review its position and embrace openness rather than protectionism. So, the RCP wants India to come back. They want India to be a part of the RCP. The doors are open. The 18-month cooling period is waived off, and they want India to come back to openness rather than protectionism. This is about the RCP and the current